Thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. We're going to talk a lot about nutrition, lifestyle, male fertility testing, and a whole lot more. This event will be held in the style of a panel. So we're actually going to ask each of our panelists questions, and then we're going to have tons of time for Q&A at the end as well. But first, I'd really like to introduce Legacy as well as our panelists here today. So what is Legacy? Three of us here on the panel come from Legacy. Legacy is a digital fertility clinic that allows you to test, freeze, and improve your sperm from home. So what does that mean? Usually in the past, you would have had to go to a clinic to get any sort of sperm testing, such as a semen analysis, sperm DNA analysis. And Legacy has made all of that possible from home, made it more affordable and more accessible. So basically everything that we're doing revolves around the world of male fertility, the world of sperm health. In addition to semen analysis and advanced male fertility testing, we've also created supplements, nutrition and lifestyle coaching, and sperm freezing. Basically, all of our services revolve around allowing people to improve male fertility, to improve their sperm health, and have a family when and how they want to. So we're hosting tonight's event, but we have a couple of panelists joining us, and I'd like to introduce them. First on our panel is Dr. Ramy Abou Ghayda. Ramy is an andrologist-urologist. So what that means is that he's a urologist who specializes in male fertility and sperm health. In addition to being a medical doctor, because I guess that just wasn't enough, he's also a master's in public health. He's a practicing physician and a researcher, as well as our chief medical officer here at Legacy. He's also one of our fertility specialists. So if you are a Legacy client and you schedule a results call to go over your report, you very well may speak with Ramy. Dr. Ramy is here to help us understand more about male fertility in general and how lifestyle can impact sperm health. Thank you for joining us, Ramy. Our next panelist is Brooke Boskovich. Brooke is a registered a registered dietitian nutritionist, a functional and integrative practitioner, and the founder of Brooke Boskovich Nutrition. She's also created a program called Master Your Fertility. So she specializes in the fertility space. She takes a deeper look at hormone balance, digestive wellness, and nutrient status to support overall health and redirect the body's focus to reproductive function. This integrative program includes 5 pillars: nutrition, exercise and movement, sleep, stress, and environment. And we're going to talk about all of those things tonight. Brooke is passionate about fertility, and she has helped hundreds of couples with unexplained fertility, PCOS, and endometriosis take home healthy babies, which is just the best part of, I think, everything that we do. Jaclyn is also joining us from Legacy. Jaclyn Doyle is a client experience specialist here. And the really cool thing about working with Jaclyn is that she's also a Legacy client. In fact, she actually joined our team after having such a great experience using Legacy and consulting with Dr. Ramy along with her husband. And Jaclyn will get to tell us a little bit about her personal journey, as well as some of the nuts and bolts details of Legacy. So thank you to all of our panelists for joining us this evening. I want to remind everyone, if you have any questions, please put it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we will get to it at the end. So what are we going to talk about tonight? We're going to talk a little bit about how lifestyle impacts, or not a little bit, a lot about how lifestyle impacts sperm health. We're going to talk about fueling male fertility with food. So what kinds of nutrients, what kinds of foods, what kind of supplements can really support people as they're going through their fertility journey, and then how to implement changes to support fertility. So like, how long should you be doing this for? When is the right time to start? So I'd love to start by asking a couple of questions, and I'm actually going to turn my screen share off so everyone can see. All right. Great. So I'd love to start with a question for Dr. Ramy. Could you give us like a brief overview of how sperm health affects a couple's ability to conceive, and like what are the semen parameters that people are looking at?
Sure. So male fertility and female fertility in general is a very complicated process, right? To the best of our knowledge, semen parameter and semen analysis is the single best test to check the potential for male fertility, or to check if there is any potential problems or challenges with male fertility. Even though we know and we acknowledge that this test is imperfect, but this is by proxy the best thing we have at this point, right? We don't have any molecular, we don't have blood tests, we have this very simple semen analysis a man would do to check a fertility potential. When we do semen analysis, we check for a couple of things. First, we check for the volume of the semen. Second, we check for concentration, which is how many sperm we have per ml. We can check for number, it's that absolute number of sperm we can see under the microscope. We can check also for the quality of the sperm, which are basically the motility and morphology. Motility is the ability for the sperm to swim. So we need a healthy living sperm to go from the vagina to the cervix, to the uterus, and swim all the way up to the tube for it to meet the egg and fertilize the egg. We can also check for the morphology of the sperm. Basically, how normal is the sperm looking? Does it have two tails, two heads? How's the acrosome doing? So basically, this is more of a non-functional test. It will give us some idea of potential problem, potential challenges, and potential diseases that can be treated.
Would you say that there are, that changing your lifestyle can actually impact your semen parameters, your sperm count, motility, morphology, et cetera?
This is a very accurate statement. Actually, we should look at the body as a whole, right? This is a holistic approach for fertility and for health in general. If you're healthy, if your body is healthy, if you do stuff that are good for your well-being, this is going to reflect positively with semen parameters, right? So we have a golden rule that anything that's good for you and for your health is good for sperm production. So in general, and Brooke is going to go into the details, we tell our patients and our clients, if you eat healthy, for example, a lot of green stuff, no added sugar, no trans fat, this is going to be good for your sperm, right? If you exercise a couple of times per week, if you sleep around 7 hours per night, if you're not very stressed, this is all good for sperm production. Also, the clients and patients should be aware that anything that increases the temperature of their testicle will negatively impact sperm production. The testicle sits outside of the body for a specific reason. It's because they like cooler temperature compared to the internal body temperature. So hot tub, jacuzzi, saunas, very tight underwear. If we put our laptops on the lab for extended period of time, all of these factors might raise the temperature of the testicles and might negatively impact semen production. And finally, smoking, excessive alcohol consumption, marijuana, or any recreational drug use has the potential also to affect semen production. We have to keep in mind that this is only a correlation relationship, right? It's not a direct causation. It's not like if you don't do these things, you're going to have worse numbers. It means that if you live a healthier lifestyle, you have a higher probability to have better numbers and vice versa.
Thank you so much. So I'd love to turn to Brooke to talk about some of the specifics of how nutrition can affect male fertility. So are there specific dietary patterns or like eating habits, diets that have been correlated with improved male fertility?
Yeah, so the one that is most researched is the Mediterranean eating pattern as a whole, and for supporting sperm parameters, like really across the board. If you look at research as a whole, there's other like specific nutrients that are really helpful in high amounts too, that are really part of that Mediterranean diet pattern. So things that are like really high in antioxidants. So we're looking for color, which is naturally a part of that Mediterranean eating pattern. So dark greens, definitely colorful fruits and veggies, red colors are really, really helpful for antioxidant called lycopene as well. But then other nutrients like folate, B6, B12, which we can definitely get into specifics as far as what foods, but eating pattern as a whole is really that Mediterranean diet that we're looking for. That's plant focused, but not plant only. So we're still including some very nutrient dense animal proteins as well.
So what are those specific foods and like specific nutrients? So we've talked about lycopene, folate. What are some others?
So some of the bigger ones are vitamin C. So you would find vitamin C in foods like, of course, citrus, but other foods that are really rich in vitamin C are strawberries and red peppers. Even tomatoes and kiwis are really rich in vitamin C as well. Vitamin E is a very helpful one too. And both vitamin C and vitamin E are antioxidants. And so anytime I mention antioxidants, they are protective of oxidation of that sperm, which is one of the mechanisms that we think is how those nutrients are protecting that sperm and supporting the shape, morphology, as Dr. Ramy mentioned, as well as the movement of the sperm and the count as a whole too. So when we protect our sperm from oxidative damage, we're supporting all sperm parameters technically. So some foods that you find vitamin E in our sunflower seeds, pistachios, walnuts are a big one as well, really rich in vitamin E. Another very helpful nutrient is beta carotene. And those are kind of our orangey foods. So sweet potatoes, carrots, tomatoes are also a good source of beta carotene. And tomatoes are where we find that lycopene antioxidant as well. And other red pink foods are where we find lycopene as well. Watermelon, papaya, red grapefruit are a couple other lycopene rich ones too. And then the last couple nutrients that I want to touch on are selenium and zinc. So those are very supportive of sperm health too. So selenium is found in foods like Brazil nuts, but also tuna, sardines, shrimp, and eggs. And then zinc is found in fish and seafood, as well as legumes, or beans rather, chickpeas, and then a couple of nuts like cashews are rich in zinc as well. And those nutrients are also supportive of all of the sperm parameters in some capacity too. There's actually a ton of research around zinc specifically that's very supportive of sperm health.
Thank you. So would you say that it's imperative for people to get these nutrients through their diet, like organically through eating, or is it also helpful to supplement with vitamins and things that you can find at like a health food store?
Yeah, well, in a perfect world, I would love to say that a diet is absolutely enough. And we can get a lot of them from diet. We always have to remember that Mother Nature knew what she was doing in putting nutrients together. So nutrients do work synergistically. And when a food is rich in zinc, it's also high in other nutrients that support zinc being used in the body. So it's important to include those foods, which is why I mentioned that, but sometimes we just can't get quite enough. Like we can't quite get those evidence-based doses in diet alone. And there's a few reasons for that. Of course, food quality, soil, those all play factors in them. So supplements can definitely be helpful in filling in the gaps and kind of boosting those levels a little higher in order to do our part in providing our body the nutrients to support that sperm quality.
Yeah, and I have to make a small plug here that Legacy actually did just come out with our own male fertility supplement that includes pretty much all of those nutrients that you just talked about and is super evidence-based. So I have to put in that little plug there. I want to talk a little bit about the flip side. Is there anything that people should specifically cut out of their diet? So we're talking a lot about like the positive things. Is there anything that can improve sperm health if you remove it?
Yeah, so definitely some of the things that Dr. Ramy mentioned as far as reducing alcohol and tobacco and definitely eliminating marijuana. But food-wise, trans fat for sure is something we want to totally avoid. Fast food, there's actually research just showing that the more often that we eat fast food, the more that it decreases sperm parameters. So it's unfavorable for sperm parameters as a whole and female fertility as well. Soda also, so sugar, added sugar in the diet as a whole. Soda specifically is one that's pointed out in the research. I would completely eliminate that. Definitely. And when I say sugar, it doesn't mean you can't ever have any sugar, but we're talking about like decreasing it, making sure you're focusing most of your energy on the nutrient-rich sources of food. And as we're talking about sugar, it is important to pay attention to blood sugar balance. And so eating balanced, as is outlined in the Mediterranean eating pattern, really, we want to be making sure that we're including healthy fats, protein, with our carbs and starches. So absolutely include the starchy veggies, whole grains, but make sure that you're also getting that protein and fat in there. That's really friendly for the blood sugar and therefore for overall hormone balance, which does play a process in sperm, which I'm sure Dr. Ramy could talk about a little bit more. But that's something that I work with my clients on quite a bit to make sure that they're balancing their meals as well as getting those nutrient dense foods in there.
Yeah, I know, like the way that hormones work in the body, it's such like almost like a Rube Goldberg, how everything is interconnected. I would love to turn to Ramy. So we've talked a little bit about nutrition and the kinds of nutrients that we should be including in our diets and the kinds of nutrients we should not be including. What about other things? What about smoking, drinking, exercise, sleep, stress, stuff like that?
So with smoking is bad, right? Smoking in general is bad. It's going to be bad for sperm production. Alcohol, anything in moderation is not a big problem, right? So if you drink a couple of beers on the weekend, this should not be a big problem. Anything that's like you're binging on is bad for sperm and it's going to be bad for your health. So just be aware and be conscious about the amount of alcohol you drink, about your smoking pattern. And then, as Brooke said, like be conscious about what you're eating, choose the good, healthy food for you. I know it's very hard to control stress, to control sleep, but if you know about these, like the magic numbers of try to sleep 7 hours per night, and if you can do it every day, then try to do it 2-3 times a week, right? If we suggest that you go out and do some work, some cardio, a couple of times per week, now you know that doing so would increase your chances of having normal semen parameter. So you can put some effort by just being conscious about the whole idea.
What is the best way for people to kind of get started? Like, is this something that you should start when you first start trying to conceive? Prior to that, like how long will it take people to see these impacts on their sperm health?
This is a very good question. So we should always remember that the sperm cycle is around 74 days, meaning that any change or any variable that you do today, you're not going to see its effects until 3 or 4 months from today. So if you're planning to conceive, let's say in 6 months or 8 months, you should start at least 6 months in advance by living healthier, getting a better lifestyle, getting more sleep, getting into the routine of doing some exercises, because it's going to take time for the sperm cycle to occur and for these changes to reflect in a better semen parameters.
Thanks. I think that's a great point. I feel like everybody sort of thinks, like in a hetero couple, they think a lot about how the female partner has to change her lifestyle in order to support a pregnancy. And they don't think as much about how the male partner should really be changing their lifestyle as well in order to support a healthy pregnancy and healthy conception.
And to your point, like this should be a lifestyle, right? We know that we have good evidence that fertility is now a sign and a reflection of overall health. We have so many science and published data suggesting that people who are infertile when they're young, they were at a high risk of developing more chronic diseases like hypertension, diabetes, more hospital admission. So in fact, fertility is a reflection of the overall health, and it's a reflection of the way you're living and how healthy you are. So it's very important to be conscious about it.
Yeah. Jaclyn, I'd love to talk a little bit about your personal experience with this. Like, what are some of the things that you and your husband have tried to implement, like lifestyle changes? I know it's been quite a journey for you.
I know I'm sitting here listening to Brooke and Dr. Ramy talking, and I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, thinking back to this and that. And I think one of the biggest things that I wish I could have told myself 6 years ago when my husband and I started our fertility journey would be to have a baseline semen analysis done right off the bat. Because like you were saying, so many people look at the woman first, and that's exactly what we were doing because I suffer from PCOS. So right off the bat, we're thinking this is a one-sided problem when all along we didn't know that my husband also had male factor issues. So looking back, I wish we would have done that. It was an accessibility issue. So that was something that came into play. After that, when we actually knew that we both were facing suboptimal fertility, I would say that we encountered a lot of medical misinformation out there, a lot of anecdotal evidence, and I wish we had more access to experts experts in fertility, such as Brooke and Dr. Ramy. It took a while to find you guys, but here we are now. I would say that we tried a lot of different ways of eating, a lot of different exercise regimens, fasting, and things like this. Not realizing that maybe it wasn't so much what we were deducting from our diets, but what we needed to add to our diets. I would also say that one of the biggest changes that we have made that has helped my husband is that he works in healthcare. He was working night shift. We have now transitioned him over to working day shift because his sleep schedule was just wrecked. He was not a functioning human half the time when he was working nights. He was getting maybe 4 or 5 hours of sleep. So this is something that we've now changed. We've also changed his diet in adding more things, more vegetables, more whole grains, more vitamin-rich foods for him, more antioxidants. And also, it wasn't until we encountered Dr. Ramy that we actually found out through testing that my husband actually needed endocrine therapy too. It wasn't just a nutrition and lifestyle issue. Like you were talking about earlier, this is a whole body thing. This is, it's not just change your diet or change your, take this medication. There's so many things that compound it. So that's kind of the gist of where we're at with that right now. But there are a lot of different factors there that come into play.
Yeah, thank you. And I feel like that's so important too, is like to talk about how, yes, all of these changes that you can make can really support fertility, but it's not a cure-all, right? It's not a silver bullet. And I think the best place that anyone can start is with that baseline testing, because you really don't know that there's an issue until you check it out. So would you say, Ramy, that you think that semen analysis is like the best place to start for anybody who's wants to start their fertility journey?
This is very accurate. So we know that male factor is around 50% of the reason responsible for a couple's infertility, right? It's not only a female issue, it's a male and a female issue. And luckily enough, we have a very simple, straightforward, reasonably good test to do, which is a semen analysis, which will give us some sort of an idea, a projection, if there is any problem or not. Then I think it's a very good first step. Second, we should just have a lifestyle that's sustainable and reproducible, right? We cannot go, as Brooke said, on these crazy diets that we cannot sustain for a long period of time. So everything should be reproducible, sustainable, that will fit our schedule. And third, if we feel that we cannot do a specific recommendation like sleep or diet, for example, with diet, we can supplement with these antioxidant minerals and vitamins. I just wanted to add to Brooke's point that one of the best antioxidant we have good data and a high level of evidence is called coenzyme Q10. We have randomized controlled trials showing that men who took this CoQ10 at 300 milligram per day had better quality and quantity of the sperm. So we have many ways around lifestyle and around like the overall health. Most importantly, it's not only about lifestyle. So once we are aware about lifestyle and we see any abnormalities in our semen parameter, we should always get an official physician appointment, right? We need to go to a urologist who specializes in male fertility or an andrologist, and we will run all sorts of diagnostic testing to try and identify any correctable cause for male fertility, right? So any endocrine disruption, any low testosterone, any varicocele. So our main goal is to try to identify something to treat, because once we do this, and then again, we wait for a couple of months after any intervention, treatment, or supplement, then we expect that these semen parameters will increase, and this will give us a better chance at fertility.
Thank you so much. So, okay, so we know that in the past, people have had to go to a clinic or a sperm bank to get this sort of testing, and now Legacy makes it possible to do that at home. Jaclyn, can you talk a little bit about the process, just like a quick overview?
Absolutely. The process is so simple with Legacy. I was blown away when my husband and I discovered that we could have his sperm tested from the comfort of our own home. You simply order through our website, or you call us up and talk to one of our clients experienced specialists to order, and we ship a kit right to your door. It has a sample cup included and transport media that keeps your sample fresh while it arrives at our lab. We include the prepaid shipping label you need to get it back to our lab overnight. You produce your sample after a specified period of abstinence. You package everything up, send it back with FedEx. It arrives at our lab the very next morning, and you have results within 1 to 2 days. So super easy, super quick turnaround process. And also, I just want to touch on this because I know this is, important information for people that are trying to conceive. We also have our DNA fragmentation analysis that's available as well. It's not a separate analysis. It can be processed on your sample that you send in for your comprehensive semen analysis. So that's something super easy to add on as well. And then also, I believe we're going to be sending out an email after the event for anybody that's interested in ordering their sperm analysis. We're going to be sending out a promo code as a thank you for everyone attending tonight.
Thank you. That is correct. We will be doing that. I really want to also highlight that one of the most valuable things I think that people get from a legacy analysis is that after they get the results, which I personally I think are really easy to read and like well explained. And I used to work at a fertility clinic, so I've seen a lot of the really like dry medical ones. Ours are like a little bit more fun, but you can also actually discuss those results and like your family plans with a fertility specialist. So either with a doctor like Ramy or with a fertility nurse. So you can actually like talk to a real person. It doesn't have to be like all computerized or all in clinic. You can get a combination, and you really still can get that personalized assistance and guidance through your fertility journey without leaving home. So I feel like that's really important too. So we do have a bunch of questions. So I would love to get started on a Q&A session. And I'm going to try to direct the questions towards the person to whom it seems like most relevant. But if anybody else wants to jump in, please definitely feel free. So the first question we have is, how much does a legacy test cost, and is it covered by insurance? And I think this is a question for Jaclyn.
So the cost for our comprehensive analysis is $195. That does include shipping both ways. It also includes your complimentary telehealth consultation as well, your results review. If you did want to have the DNA fragmentation analysis done in conjunction with that, it would be $390. As far as insurance goes, we do contract with a handful of insurance providers. We have a handy eligibility tool that you can find on our website. You go in and plug in your membership number, and it will tell you if you're eligible or not. So that is something that is available as well. If you do have FSA available through your health plan, we can also provide a receipt for that. So that is something as well.
This one I think is for Ramy, although Brooke, you might have some insight into it as well. Are there specific like types of exercise? We talk about, getting some cardio in a couple times a week, but is there specific types of exercise that are better or worse? This person specifically says that they've heard biking is not great. And I also have seen some research that says the same.
So the general rule is, again, anything in moderation is good for sperm production. We have evidence that marathon running, very high intensity training is actually bad for sperm because it will decrease your total testosterone, secondary to a loss of muscle mass, right, and fat. So anything very high intensity is not very good. Anything sedentary, like you're not doing anything, is not good. Couple of times per week is the sweet spot. Biking is a bit tricky because if you do daily biking, you're going to be compressing the prostate, the nerves, and the vessel. And this has been negatively correlated with semen parameter, right? So it's going to increase the temperature of your testicle. It's going to compromise the nerves and the blood supply. So in theory, we don't suggest if you do a daily biking to just mix it up with some other form of cardio or weightlifting.
Thank you. And Brooke, how do you usually guide your clients on this?
Yeah, so I always talk about stress and anything that's going to increase stress in the body, which can be too much exercise, right? High intensity, too much of the same exercise can definitely increase stress. You can think of it the same way with diet, right? So too much sugar and does increase stress and inflammation in the body, which is another form of stress on the body, and it's not good for fertility. For either gender, and definitely not for sperm health as well. So moderation, absolutely, moderate intensity exercise that you enjoy and that's sustainable for you is typically what I suggest.
So if someone is looking to get like nutrition help that's specific for fertility, can they go to any dietitian? Like, do all dietitians or nutritionists have this sort of understanding of fertility, or should they look for someone that's a specialist like you?
You should definitely look for somebody who has additional education in fertility. It's definitely not an area that we learn about just becoming a registered dietitian. Unfortunately, we should, right? Because we're ourselves are all interested in being healthy, and as Dr. Ramy says, like fertility is a sign of overall health. But definitely look for somebody who has that specialty in fertility for the best information, most evidence-based information.
Okay, so here's a question from the Q&A box for Dr. Ramy. You talked a little bit about like avoiding heat, and this person says, aside from avoiding heat, e.g. hot tubs, tight underwear, what can you do to cool down the testicles? They've read about using ice. Is this really necessary? Does it actually help?
So it's a good question. So we have enough data and evidence to support that increase in heat will negatively affect semen parameters and the testicular function. However, we don't have data suggesting that if you cool your testicle, you're going to have positive results, right? The rule of thumb is shy away from anything that would increase the temperature, keep them at room temperature. If you want to do a hot tub once a week or once every 10 days, it shouldn't be a big deal. But if you do it daily, this is the problem. But I've seen a lot of products on the market whereby like you have ice packs, testicular ice support. This is not evidence-based, and we do not recommend it in our clinical daily activity.
Here's a sort of related question. You mentioned avoiding hot, spas, saunas, jacuzzis. Is the damage from using that permanent to the sperm or temporary?
In theory, it's temporary. It depends on how long you've been doing it. If you've been doing it for like years and years and years, probably there's some permanent damage there. Again, remember, sperm cycle is around 3 months. So if you've been doing it for the past, let's say 6 months or 7 months, you have to stop for at least 3 or 4 months to see any improvement or return to your baseline.
Yeah. Here's a question I think would be best for Brooke. Are there foods to eat and foods to avoid to specifically help sperm morphology, as opposed to like if you have low sperm morphology but normal parameters in other ways?
Yeah, foods that you want to increase to support improvement in that morphology definitely include zinc. So zinc would be oysters, crab, dark meat chicken is rich in zinc, chickpeas, other beans are also good sources of zinc. Cashews are one of the nuts that are richest in zinc as well. And then antioxidants as a whole, really. Lycopene is definitely one that we want to make sure to include. And then Dr. Ramy mentioned CoQ10. So in ubiquinol form specifically, that can definitely support morphology as well. And as Dr. Ramy has mentioned, you want to make sure that you're increasing those nutrients and antioxidants for at least a period of 75 days minimum in order to see changes with that. Other antioxidants that are definitely supportive include vitamin E. So that would be your sunflower seeds, pistachios, peanut butter, and walnuts as well. And then just reducing other things that we've talked about as well. So trans fat, sugar, fast food are also important really for all of the sperm parameters. Even if you're focusing on just one, those things are going to be supportive.
Anyone else getting like a little hungry from this, this panel chat? I'm like, pistachios sound good. Okay, here is a question that I think would be best for Dr. Ramy. I thought the research on marijuana was mixed. Has something new come out suggesting it's good or bad? So basically, let's talk a little bit about marijuana.
This is an interesting question because traditionally, we knew that marijuana had the same chemical composition of estrogen, right? So when you smoke a lot of marijuana, your body's going to perceive that I have a lot of estrogen, and it's going to decrease your testosterone, which is the male hormone responsible for sperm production. So the more you smoke, the more you're going to have estrogen in your body, the less you're going to have testosterone. In theory, you're going to have less, like a lower quality and quantity of the sperm. However, we have new data, which are anecdotal, showing that there's actually no direct link between smoking marijuana and semen parameters. We have 1 or 2 papers actually saying, hey, we have better numbers in people who smoke marijuana. It's mixed. I still believe in the traditional data and evidence saying that a lot of marijuana might disrupt the testosterone to estrogen ratio and will lead to a lower semen parameter.
Thank you. So it seems like maybe still some scientific conflict, but erring on the side of
once a week.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I have one more question that's actually kind of a counterpoint question to what we answered before, Brooke, and that is, what about if someone's just looking to improve motility? Is it like similar to the morphology suggestions, or is there some different things that they should incorporate?
Yeah, good question. So motility, similar. I mean, still helpful to include the same foods, of course. Zinc is also a good one in there. Zinc is kind of a superstar for improving every single sperm parameter. But for motility specifically, I would also focus on vitamin C rich foods. That would be your citrus, strawberries, red peppers, kiwis are really high in vitamin C, and tomatoes. There for motility. Beta carotene is another one that's beneficial for motility. That's found in your kind of red orange foods. So carrots, pumpkin, sweet potato, butternut squash are rich in that beta carotene. And then, I mean, CoQ10 again is definitely supportive of motility too. CoQ10 is found in small amounts in some foods. So that would be sardines, poultry, and meat. In the Mediterranean eating pattern, it's advised to limit red meat consumption. Doesn't mean you eliminate it. Red meat is very, very nutrient dense and it's going to have a lot of these nutrients that we're talking about, like zinc and CoQ10, as I just mentioned, as well as some other important nutrients like B12 and B6 that are very important for sperm health too. But yeah, that's kind of the gist that you want to focus on, and really like all of these nutrients are just supportive of all sperm parameters, so you can't really go wrong. And a lot of these foods do have a couple of these nutrients in them too, so just keep that in mind.
Alicia, just one point regarding CoQ10. So all of the studies with CoQ10 have been done using the 300 milligrams, so 300 to 400 milligram per day, right? If you want to buy a supplement for fertility, you want to make sure that it has enough CoQ10 in it. The funny story about CoQ10 is that it's one of the most expensive antioxidants. So most of these supplements on the market will claim that, hey, we have CoQ10, that's going to be 5 milligram or 10 milligram, which is not, right? If you want to buy a supplement on the market, just make sure it has enough CoQ10, because this is the scientific supported dosage for CoQ10, and it's around 300 to 400 milligram per day.
Thank you for that. And I think it's also really important with regards to Brooke's comment too, that morphology and motility can also be related, right? I mean, the sperm has to be the correct structure in order to swim in the proper way. And so they're all interconnected. Okay, here is a question that I think probably both Ramy and Brooke might be able to give some insight on. Are there tips on improving sperm motility and morphology after a vasectomy? I think that they mean maybe a vasectomy reversal.
Only 2 ways to obtain sperm after vasectomy is either you go to the testicle itself, you do an aspiration or a sperm extraction, and then you get a couple of sperm, or you reconnect these small tubes called the vas deferens, and then you hope for a new flow of sperm. After doing this vasectomy reversal, we have data and evidence that the quality and the quantity of the sperm might be compromised just because of the technical challenges of the surgery, because of the antibody that might be formed after the vasectomy. So actually we know that the quality and the quantity of the sperm might be lower after a vasectomy reversal. it's going to take time. And we always suggest to our patient that they need to wait around a year to go back to their baseline or just to see where they're at. And if they see that the quality or the quantity is not as optimal as possible, then they go to these supplements or lifestyle modification. And we have so many patients after vasectomy reversal, they still need to do IUI or IVF. They're not the majority, but it happens.
This is a great question for Ramy as well. This person wrote, my doctor recently told me that he thinks there isn't much point to getting a DNA fragmentation test. What does it add to the bigger picture of sperm health and fertility?
This is a very important question. So DNA fragmentation is an indicator of the integrity of DNA in the sperm, right? So the main function of the sperm is to swim all the way up and then just deliver this DNA from its head into the egg. And this is how fertilization would happen, right? So DNA fragmentation at this point is in the soft guidelines of the ASRM and the AUA because it's very hard to perform. You need to go to the lab if you're not using legacy, and then it's expensive, right? So if we have certain indication for DNA fragmentation, so if you're curious about your fertility status, if you want to see how's the integrity of your sperm DNA, you can order that. If you have recurrent miscarriages, if you've been through multiple cycles of IVF or IUI and they're not successful, then there might be a problem with the integrity of DNA, meaning that the double-stranded of the sperm DNA might be easily broken. And then once we know this other data point, then we think, oh, there must be something there. And we can identify it. And if we correctly identify this cause, we might correct it. So for example, we know that varicocele, which is the most common correctable cause of male infertility, is a condition that's very common in men. One third of men around the world have this condition. It's basically a dilation of the veins around the testicle. When these veins are dilated, they're going to bring more blood in the testicle. It's going to increase the temperature. It's going to put some oxidative stress. So once we have high DNA fragmentation and you have a varicocele, then this might be an indication to surgically correct the varicocele, and then the DNA fragmentation will improve after surgery. So actually, it's another data point which is as important as the quantity and the quality of the sperm, because it will give us some sort of evidence regarding the function of the sperm and its ability to fertilize an egg.
Thank you. One more question that I think might be for both Ramy and Brooke. So this person wants to know if their body temperature rises while they're exercising, which I think everybody's does, is that sort of a net negative or a net positive on their sperm health? And how does that work? Ramy, you want to start?
I would say this increase in temperature is not substantial. It's not going to affect the temperature of the testicle, right? We're talking about severe high temperature around the testicle, right? If it increases by a couple of degrees from your baseline 37 degrees Celsius. So exercising, sweating, all of these factors would not increase substantially the temperature of the body and should not have any effect on the semen parameters. Brooke, do you agree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So increasing your internal temperature has less effect on the testicles because that's why they're outside the body, right? To help keep them cool. So if you're not sitting in the hot tub or the sauna to increase that environment outside of your body, it's less likely to impact the sperm.
Okay, one more question. Is there a minimum amount of sperm needed to be produced to have an adequate sample? Perhaps at least 1 milliliter or more, or will an analysis be able to be performed regardless of the amount of ejaculate? Or should you do multiple ejaculations? Okay, so there's a couple of questions there. So maybe either Ramy or Jaclyn can answer this question, but is there a minimum semen volume that can be received by the lab that can still be analyzed?
So Jaclyn, you want to go or should I go?
You know, Jaclyn, off the top of your head?
I believe it is 1 milliliter. Am I wrong, Ramy?
No, you're not wrong. So actually anything more than 0 is good for us, right? So even if you have a couple thousand of sperm in there, you can still do the analysis. Most importantly, once you have a lower sperm count, you should think about freezing your sperm, right? You should make sure that you have something at least for you in the freezer if you need IVF or IO in the future, or if there's no way to improve this number. Because freezing sperm is having a very cheap insurance policy for future fertility, right? These numbers might go down to zero, and we have so many patients and clients whereby they had lower number and a couple of years or a month later, they dipped down into zero sperm. So anything a bit more than 10,000 sperm is good for analysis. Again, if you have this condition, then there is a medical need to go check yourself. You need to go to a specialist and make sure why these numbers are suboptimal. Is there any correctable cause for them? Is there any disturbances in your testosterone? Is there any condition like varicocele? Is there high DNA fragmentation? So basically, we have an algorithm that we run through to detect any abnormalities. And then if you have, again, lower number, or if you have higher numbers, if you have higher numbers, you want also to freeze the sperm sample just because you want to lock in the good number, right? We know that advanced paternal age after the age of 40 or 45 have been correlated with increased risk of autism and genetic abnormalities. So if you're young, you're healthy, you want to freeze your sperm. If you're young, your sperm is suboptimal, you want to also have something to use for IVF or IUI. So both ways, you should think about freezing your sperm. And then freezing your sperm, we do it with liquid nitrogen. Basically, we just stop time. So all cellular and molecular mechanism would stop. So there's no increase in genetic abnormalities or IVF failures with using frozen sperm compared to a fresh sample.
So the answer to should you do multiple ejaculations for one analysis here, I think, is no, right? Because that's not really an accurate picture.
No, I mean, if you want to freeze more, then you'll do more ejaculation, more sample. If you just want to freeze one sample and you get like a viable 4 vials and you're satisfied, then you just provide one sample.
Thank you. Okay, I think that if people have more questions, I would love for them to follow up with us after. We will give you some ways that you can reach both us and Brooke after this presentation. I'm sure any of us would be happy to talk with you more, get you the information that you need in order to be successful in your journey. And I want everyone to be on the lookout for the follow-up email that Jaclyn mentioned earlier, which is all about, it's going to give you a lot of links to different places to reach us, but it's also going to give you a promo code. So for anybody that has not already done some sperm testing, now is a really good time to get started.